Hey rockers, back yet again. Going back to the 90s. Back in the 90s, we had a daughter, and that daughter grew up on a steady diet of rock and roll. Like, we played rock and roll a lot because we were into rock and roll and still are. We play all kinds of cool tunes around the house, and the one band that the daughter really took a liking to was the band KISS. Yep, like many kids that grew up being fascinated by those ghoulish rock and roll weirdos, she was obsessed with them. And not just obsessed, but we actually ended up finding a copy of KISS Meets the Phantom of the Park. Do you remember that movie? It's considered like a B movie, but it's a classic amongst KISS fans. She had a VHS copy of that thing on tape, and she would watch it all the time. Now, this had to have been probably around the year 1997, 98. You're talking about, 5 or 6 year old kid that used to get this thing out and just want to watch it over and over and over. She was used to her father being in bands, that's me, and it didn't really faze her. She realized it was entertainment and that they were people, but she was just enthralled by the characters. And she wore out that VHS video. We had to get her a second copy of that damn thing. Well, flash forward to the year 2000. The daughter is now 7 years old, and I'm working at WWCT Rock 106 Radio in Peoria, Illinois, and I'm doing broadcasting DJ work. KISS comes to town. KISS has announced that they're coming to town. It was a big deal. It was like the big farewell tour, and everyone was like, what? It was Ace Frehley, Peter Criss, Gene Simmons, and Paul Stanley, the original KISS, doing their farewell tour. And we actually were giving away tickets on the radio station, and I actually pulled a radio stunt that went wrong, or I did a little joke, and it was a joke where I actually got on the air at one point late at night and said, oh, by the way, the KISS show's canceled if you haven't heard. And well, I totally forgot to get back on the air like a minute later and say, just kidding. And a big rumor went around Peoria and around the radio station that really almost got me fired before my career started. Anyway, back to the subject. So right now, if you could do me a favor and subscribe to this channel, I would really appreciate it, you guys. Come on, it takes a second and it's free. It won't hurt you. Also, maybe give it a like and leave a comment, man. So my daughter's 7 years old. KISS is coming to Peoria. Ted Nugent's the opening act. At the time, he was very controversial. He still is. We're not going to get into politics on this channel. It's all about the rock and roll, man. So KISS and Ted Nugent, right? We decided, let's take a daughter to the concert. And we got tickets through the radio station that were kind of like a VIP thing for special people. But, it was kind of in the back of the place, but it was in a big box, like a special box where you had like stuff to eat and drink. But we wanted to take our daughter and make it a special experience. So I thought, let's do it. Instead of getting floor seats, let's get up there in the high-rise box so she can see what's happening, and it's going to be great. So we ended up getting a limousine that night. And my hair at the time was dyed jet black for years and years. And we decided to get a limo and make this a total rock and roll experience and memory for our daughter. So my wife Tracy and I and our daughter and a couple friends decided to get this limo. And we did. And the night of the show, we're driving around the Peoria Civic Center, and people are all walking up from every direction, heading into the Civic Center to see KISS. And my daughter's so excited, it was palpable. You could see it in her eyes. And she was just so excited to see KISS performing live and no longer on that damn VHS videotape, right? So we're driving around the Civic Center, and I thought, man, people are staring at this limousine, and I bet you they think, hey, that's KISS maybe. And sure enough, people were driving, and I told my daughter, hey, check it out. I think they think we're the band. And she's like, really? Do you think so? And she was getting real excited about the prospect that we were fooling everybody, that we were the band. And I thought, I have an idea. Watch this. So I opened the little upper contraption on the top of the limo, what do you call that thing, a window? But I opened the upper window of the limo, and where you can like stick your head out. And as we went by the Civic Center, maybe for the second, third time, as we were just circling it to fool people, my daughter was having a blast. Well, we were too. I decided to stick my head out because I had dyed jet black long hair, right? Kind of like the guys in KISS. And I stuck my head out about this much and did this. I was doing the whole finger thing, KISS thing. And man, people were freaking. Some people started running towards the limousine. Other people are tapping their friends on the shoulder. Some people had cameras out, and it was just a ball. My daughter was dying laughing, and she was just like, oh my God, I can't believe they think we're the band. I go, they do. And we just kept circling maybe 2 or 3 times. It was awesome, but people absolutely thought we were KISS. It was really fun, man. And just to see my daughter's reaction at 7 years old, you know, because wow, that's pretty young to be going to a show like KISS, which is a basic assault on your senses, man. Hearing, seeing, the whole deal. It's a spectacle seeing KISS live. I got to tell you, that farewell tour took place in, May 15th of 2000. And man, I've seen KISS a lot of times, and I'm telling you, this was one of the best shows ever. They were super explosive, super animated. Everyone in the band was really in top form. They all looked great. It was really good, man. I got to say that it was the very last tour to ever feature original guitar player Ace Frehley. The tour started March 11th, 2000 and ended April 13th, 2001. It was intended to be the last KISS tour, but however, in 2002, the band did announce that they decided they were not going to retire as planned, which made a lot of people happy, and a lot of people say, you did that to make money or whatever, that kind of thing. But it's happened quite a bit, hasn't it, folks, with a lot of bands? Let's face it. What are you going to do? Anyway, Eric Singer did play drums on the Japanese and the Australian legs of the tour because Peter couldn't reach a contract agreement with the guys from KISS, meaning they probably didn't want to pay him what he wanted, I guess. Again, what are you going to do? It's all rock and roll. Who am I to judge? It was cool. They had these big sound meters on the screen at the show, by the way, before I forget and get into the story. And at one point, Paul Stanley was like, hey, look, we've got these sound meters that measure how loud you are. And it showed it really big on the screen, this meter. And as people would scream, this thing would get, tip and tip and tip. It was super cool. So Ted Nugent opened this show. Okay, I'm going to go back to the 70s. I'm like a young kid, man. In 1975, I'm like 9 years old. I remember seeing and hearing Ted Nugent all over the place. Ted Nugent never talked about politics then. Ted Nugent was from the Amboy Dukes. He was known as the Motor City Madman. He was a great rocker from Detroit, like Bob Seger, Iggy Pop, Suzi Quatro, all these great people, right? And then later, he kind of morphed into a very political figure. So we're just going to keep it at the rock thing because there's no reason to be divided over politics, guys. And I'm not having any opinion one way or another about Ted Nugent except for musically. However, now I must say, during the Ted Nugent show, when he opened up, he spent the majority of every second in minutes between every song completely talking about politics. And a lot of people were getting kind of riled up. A lot of people were getting PO'd, and some people were like, for Ted Nugent, yeah. But the majority of the people that I saw weren't. And I'm kind of like, the problem I had was with all the F words and the C word, if you know what I mean, the word that rhymes with the word hunt. Things like that. My daughter was 7 years old. It's not like her ears were virgin, but at the same time, she didn't often hear those words at that age in our house. And it was kind of like, really, man? So it was a bummer because even my wife, who was with me, and I was in a shock rock band, for years, and my daughter was kind of kept away from that. But Terrible Ted was very terrible and with his mouth that night. But the set list was kick-ass, guys. He really did rock, man. Terrible Ted did Stormtroopin' to open up his set. He did Paralyzed. He went right into Wang Dang, Sweet Poontang, an old Ted classic. Free for All, Dog Eat Dog, which is a total classic. Then he did a song called Kiss My You Know What. And that's kind of interesting to do a song with that title playing with an opening for KISS. But he did. Then he did Fred Bear, which was played a lot on WWCT Radio, the station I was working for when I went to the show. Cat Scratch Fever was next, which the audience was totally into that and singing along. I mean, who doesn't know Cat Scratch Fever, right? Then he did Stranglehold, which is another just amazing Nugent classic from the 70s. And he ended the set with the Great White Buffalo, another awesome classic from Ted Nugent. He played great. The music was fantastic. I just wish he wouldn't have cussed as much because of my kid being there, but some of you are going to go, wah, and then other people are going to go, yeah, man, I agree if a kid's going to be there. But some of you others might say, you brought your kid, you got what you wanted, punk. It was rock and roll. I get it. I'm not mad. I'm not mad, bro. Anyway, so into the Kiss set. It was freaking awesome. Yep, like I said earlier, top form. Kiss was killer, and they were introduced with, ladies and gentlemen, the hottest band in the world, Kiss. And then, of course, there was a big, huge, it looked like a big banner that was made of cloth that had Kiss in the front. It was real exclusive and nice. And then that thing finally went down, fire pots went up, and the band was right there. They appeared. My daughter looked like she was going to, you know what, herself. But she was just like, ah. And everyone around us was having a ball. Kiss was killer, man. The set list that night, man, they really did a killer set list on the farewell tour, guys. They had so much pyro, lights, just so many effects going on. Again, it was an assault of the senses. They came out doing Detroit Rock City, one of the best rock songs ever, right? They went into Deuce and then Shout It Out Loud, which was awesome. They did I Love It Loud, and then, of course, Shock Me with Ace Frehley on lead vocals. That was a treat. I love Ace. Firehouse was next, of course, old school Kiss song, into Do You Love Me? And then Calling Dr. Love, which is amazing. I love that tune. Heaven's on Fire was the next song. Then they did Let Me Go Rock and Roll. They had tons of killer lighting on effects and different weird stuff on the screens, as well as visually. You could see all of the band members. They were huge. It was awesome, man. They went into Heaven's on Fire and then Let Me Go Rock and Roll. And then, of course, when they did 2000 Man, the Space Ace man himself, Ace Frehley, did the vocals on that. And there was a huge moon image that was in the big screen that appeared behind Ace. It was like a huge moon. It was all black on the stage. And it was a really cool moment to see Ace up there, heading and fronting Kiss. And it would be the last time, of course. And there was fireworks at the very end of the song, like fireworks going off on stage. It was really cool. Then Ace did a solo that, I'm not kidding you, was between 6 and 8 minutes long because we timed it. He did a 6 to 8 minute guitar solo, and it was not even close to boring. It was awesome. It wasn't just some cliche metal solo. It was Ace Frehley at his best. He was really good, man. And his guitar started smoking during the whole solo and stuff, the whole effect. It was just good. Yep, it was killer. Then they went into Psycho Circus, Lick It Up, which of course was a crowd favorite. Then they went into Gene Simmons' part where he did his infamous bass solo. Gene had the blood in his mouth. He did the whole famous head shaking thing where just tons of blood was slowly coming out down his face, and all these crazy effects are around him where you would see like lightning and storms and thunder. It was crazy. And he still, after all those years, had it going strong then, really, really good. And then he had these cables connected to his body, and they lifted him up all the way up to the top of the place of the Civic Center, the Peoria Civic Center in Peoria, Illinois. And they stood up top of a little pedestal, and they went into God of Thunder, one of the best Kiss songs of all time. Yeah, what do you think? Please leave a comment below, and please subscribe to this channel, guys. It's helping me to build it. I appreciate you guys. After God of Thunder, they did Cold Gin. Yeah. Like Paul said, a little song about alcohol. And then they went into 100,000 Years. And then Peter Criss did his infamous drum solo. Not sure how long the solo was. I don't think it was as long as Ace's guitar solo, but it was really good. And Peter Criss definitely had his chops then. He has a lot of people surrounding him that in the music community said that kind of talk crap about Peter, but I think he's a great drummer. They did Love Gun next with Paul Stanley actually flying over the audience. It was one of the coolest rock things I'd ever seen. He literally was up there and he made people yell and scream, and that's when they put the big meter on the screen, and it showed that the level of us in the audience screaming. I gotta tell you, during this show, people around us were very aware that our daughter was young and that she was a big Kiss fanatic, and a lot of people from the radio station were there, and they just loved the kid because she was a sweetheart and real cute. And anyway, during the show, people were just totally in awe watching her enjoy this show, and her eyes were bugging out of her head. She was just so enamored with the fact that Gene Simmons was going up in the air and Paul Stanley's flying over the crowd. And I was just like this proud father thinking, I'm raising my kid on a steady diet of rock and roll. To this day, she still is totally into all rock and roll, and surpasses me by far in terms of diversity in the rock and roll and other forms of music too, like hip hop and electronica and just you name it, Americana, everything. So back to the story. Black Diamond was next. Actually, you know what? They did I Still Love You, the ballad, with Paul Stanley doing his guitar and just singing like Bob Dylan kind of song, you know, just a ballad. And it got everybody kind of chilled out for a moment after all that excitement. Then they went into Black Diamond, arguably one of the coolest songs from the first album. Peter Criss on lead vocals. Man, if you thought Peter only sang on Beth, you need to hear some of the early stuff, because he did some good lead vocal work, and Black Diamond was no exception, man. His version of that on the old Midnight Special TV show back in the 70s, 75, I believe, 77, was awesome. You got to find it, man, on YouTube. Then they went into... the band pretty much saying bye-bye and farewell. But of course, you knew there was going to be an encore, right? They did an encore. They came out with Peter Criss, just a little spotlight and him standing there. And of course, you know what's coming up next, right? He had a little stool there and he sat there and sang Beth. I think to this day is their biggest selling hit of all time, which was funny. You know, it was always like a funny bone of contention between Peter Criss and the band, because they've always had a lot of tension, well, not always, but mostly between him and the band for a lot of reasons. And when that song was number one, he was kind of like, ha ha ha, my song, you know, was the highest rated one or whatever, highest selling song. It was cool, man. There was a lot of confetti cannons at that place, man. That concert had more stuff going on. There was like cannons shooting out confetti during the encore, just like blowing paper everywhere. It was on either side of the stage, and it was just thousands of pieces of paper floating everywhere in the air. The band was up there just sweating, but they didn't miss a beat. I mean, they were just as professional as can be, man. At the very end of the show, too, after they did, of course, Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day, that was amazing, man. The band came out and they linked arms and they all did this big bow together, which was great. But Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day, that place was completely singing along, and you could tell the band were really, really high on adrenaline. They had to have been at this point. We were just spent because it was just, it was a whole night, from the limousine ride to watching my daughter just completely be enamored with this KISS show. And then, of course, just the incomplete over assault on my senses man, it was awesome. KISS was killer, man. Yeah, it was a great show. One of the best shows ever, really, man, to be honest with you. May 15th of 2000, 24 years ago. I'll be back with another rock and roll story soon, my friends. And thank you for subscribing to the channel. And please leave a little comment, and I'll say hi back, man. Cheers, rock and roll, and have a great rest of your week.